Coast to coast, border to border, and around the world, it's time for The Bill Alexander Show. The Bill Alexander Show is a guest-driven program where the topics are diverse and entertaining. Laugh and learn while you listen to one of the best hours of online radio. Now, here's your host, Bill Alexander.
Hi, everyone. Yours truly, William Eric Alexander. All my friends call me Bill, and welcome to this edition of the Bill Alexander Show. So glad you can join me today. The guest I have on the program, you may not know his name, but you know who his mother is without even thinking about it. And who am I talking today? I'm talking to Marion Ross's son, Jim Meskimen. Jim, how are you doing this evening?
Hey, I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me on. Marion Ross, yeah, that's my organic, biological, and much beloved mother, and Marion Cunningham of Happy Days fame.
Mrs. C, as we all lovingly refer to her as, is so great. So before I get started in your career, how was it growing up with your mother being Marion Ross?
Well, it was nice. I mean, she was a single mom, so we were both my sister and I were very, happy when she got jobs of any kind, commercials or guest spots on all those shows in the 70s, Mannix, Hawaii
Right.
5-0. If she got a job, we were like, oh boy, hooray. Because, we knew she had to pay the bills and we wanted things, clothes, and we wanted to have food. And so, that was great. And then when Happy Days happened, it happened very slowly and gradually, which is not the way television works today. Now you're in or you're out pretty fast. But then, they let it kind of sit there on ABC for a couple of years before it really got super popular. And it was interesting to be part of that. I mean, I was obviously just to the side. I was an ancillary witness to it. But
Right.
It was great to see something be so popular, and we didn't know what was going on. It was like when you put a video up that goes viral, you're like, what the hell's going on? Who are these people? Where did they come from? Why weren't they here 2 years ago?
Right. So what's interesting is about a month and a half ago, I talked to Anson Williams about Happy Days and working with your mother, and the same thing. He said, we knew it was something special. We just didn't know why it took so long to take off. But I guess doing a 1950 themed program in the 1970s was a little bit unique for the time.
Yeah, bit of a gamble, like all programs are. Well, Anson's a great guy. I've worked with Anson a lot. I've been directed by Anson a few times. He's a very talented guy. In fact, one of the first jobs I ever got in animation in Los Angeles anyway was doing my Anson Williams impression for Pinky and the Brain. They had written in Anson Williams in Pinky and the Brain, and I thought, I can do this.
That's funny. So let's talk about your career, because not only do you do impressions, you've been on many TV programs. You've been on NCIS. You have been on let's see,
Whose Line?
All Grown
Parks and
Up,
Recreation.
Whose Line? And you've done a lot of voiceover work for cartoons. Back at the Barnyard, the Batman, Johnny Bravo, all these things. But again, people don't know who you are. But
no,
recently,
I've labored in relative obscurity, but that's fine. That's fine with me.
And but when you recognize you, for example, a few weeks back, I was watching Apollo 13, and there you were in the film.
That's right.
And a big film, not only a big film, but it was also directed by your mother's other son, Ron Howard.
That's right. Her pseudo son, my pseudo brother, Ron. Yeah.
So how was it working with him?
Oh, great. It's always a pleasure. Anybody you talk to, they love working with Ron. He's a great director. He's as an actor himself, he knows exactly what to tell you. He knows what he wants. He's in it for the right reason, and he's obviously really skilled, a great communicator, so he can talk to all the different departments, camera department, lighting department, costumes and acting, and really get them all going in the right direction. So I look forward. Anytime I get the call from Ron, I'm very happy to work with him.
So you mentioned earlier you did the voice of Anson Williams for Pinky and the Brain. You also did Ron Howard for The Family Guy.
I did. I do Ron's voice because like Anson, I've heard him a lot, and I've talked to him a lot. So with directors too, you listen very intently. So I've been able to make a real study of it.
So do you like doing impressions? Do you feel that that's your main talent, or is it the voiceover work? Is it acting? What would you rather do?
Well, I have a lot of things I like to do. I like to stay busy.
Okay.
I'm like my mom. I learned to hustle and to get a lot of opportunities, make the most of my skills. So I do like to do impressions. It's not the thing that I wake up in the morning going, "Oh, I hope I can do a bunch of impressions today." But like if you ask me to do a voice, I'm very happy to do it. If an audition comes up, like I just had about a half an hour ago, I'm very happy to take a swing at it. It's fun. It's like a little bit of a game, It's like,
okay,
can I do this better than all the other fine actors in LA that are also, more than equipped to do this?
So do you consider yourself an impressionist like Rich Little, or do you just, like you said, do it because it may be needed for a job?
Well, Rich, I don't know. He's such a, he's the grandfather of all impressionists, all modern impressionists, or the godfather or whatever. He's the figurehead because he was, the best. He really was the best, and the most out there and visible and listenable. So, but he stayed in Vegas pretty much, or toured around and had his act and did what he did. My career hasn't been that way. I do like to play other characters that are not celebrity based. I like to create characters. I like to be on TV and play, or movies and play other kind of characters that we don't go, oh well, there you go, he's doing Tommy Lee Jones, or
right,
he's doing Lloyd Bridges. I don't know. So I like to create things. And if it involves sounding like another person, I'm happy to do it. Like, I've done Robin Williams' voice many times for various Disney projects. I played the Blue Genie quite a bit for video games and other projects, and projects of my own as well. So when it's appropriate, I like to pay homage to Robin. I also do Colonel Sanders' voice too, right now for the KFC brand, and that's a little bit more, I guess you'd say, mercenary.
Are you doing the TV commercials too?
The voiceovers for the TV commercials, yeah, and the radio.
Okay.
As well. If you don't see the Colonel, and you see his hands or something, and it's
that's
generally me. You hear a guy like this saying 11 herbs and spices and come on down, that kind of thing. That's usually me.
Okay. Now, that's really cool. Now, you mentioned Robin Williams.
Yeah.
How is it to do a performer that is so beloved and remembered for, like you said, the Blue Genie and stuff like that? Do you feel it's an honor to do him?
Absolutely.
Or are you a little bit leery because you don't want to really ruin that image that he created?
Well, both really, because it was a tremendous honor, and I was, I had the honor of being approved by Robin, because I'd been working long before he passed. So there was a point, I guess, when Disney had was auditioning people, and they said, well, Robin has allowed whoever takes over the Blue Genie to really emulate his voice, which he hadn't done in prior years. So when Dan Castellaneta did it for the television series of Aladdin, he, I guess, was discouraged from doing an impression of Robin, but created his own genie that, definitely gave a nod to the Blue Genie that Robin had created.
Right.
But in my case, I got to go full on, and indeed, when I did the audition, I did it as much like Robin as I could. 10,000 years can be such a pain in the neck. But when he passed, then I did feel very ambivalent about doing it. Like, oh my God, this is just like kind of sacrilegious, and because it meant something different. Now the voice didn't just stand for fun and creativity and thinking outside the box, but it really represented a kind of a tragedy. So I actually wrote a poem about it. That was how I kind of made my peace with it. Was I wrote a poem about it, which I have on my YouTube channel, about doing his voice, performed in his voice, and people responded really well, and it did pretty well as a video and I think as a tribute.
So are you, and that's the other thing. So are you able to do, say, Robin's voice as the Blue Genie, of course, but as himself, or maybe Mork, or even one of my favorite roles that he was in, Popeye. Are you able to do it, or are you just only focused on one aspect of his creativity?
Well, I've really only been asked to do it as the Blue Genie, but
okay.
I've listened to Robin lots of times on interviews and things like that, so it's easy to kind of extrapolate his more conversational tone.
And I also see here that you also did Johnny Carson, which had to be interesting and unique because he had that Midwestern accent,
from,
which really isn't an accent.
No, it's a vacuum of an accent, I guess you'd say, a not quite there accent. Yeah, he was born in, I believe he grew up in Nevada.
Yeah,
I believe that's right.
Okay.
No, sorry, Nebraska. Sorry, that other state that starts with N.
Yeah, I've gotten to do Johnny a lot. It's fun.
Do you have one voice that you enjoy doing most?
Well, I think I these days I really like doing Patrick Stewart's voice because he's got such a wonderful, cheerful sort of avuncular style. And, it's almost always appropriate or inappropriate, rather, to say something like Patrick Stewart. And I do enjoy it quite a lot.
Is there a voice that you don't like to do, or because you don't like to do it, you just don't do it?
Well, yes. I mean, why would I do something I don't want to do? You see, it's very simple, really. You've answered your own question.
I mean,
that was a big soft pitch for me. Yeah. No, why make it so if you don't need to make it so? Do you follow?
Yes, I understand totally. So whenever you do your acting roles, do you still go out and audition, or do they say, hey, we need a guy like this, and you have a certain stereotype, and they call you and say, hey, we need you for this role? Or do you still go out and audition?
Well, I do go out, and when I say go out, that's kind of an expression. I go to the room in my house where I tape my auditions, which is where, most actors now, you may not be aware of this, but we're mostly auditioning from home. We've been doing that since the pandemic began, and actually before. And I like that. I like auditioning at home because I can do it anytime I want. I can do as many takes as I want. And I think casting likes it too because, they get the pressure's off and the actor can just kind of do his take on it. And I do get offered roles occasionally. I just got offered a small role in a film. But that's because I know the director and he knows me and he knows that I won't screw it up. But I do a fair amount of auditioning every week, and I've made my peace with it. I've done probably tens of thousands of auditions in my career, and so I'm just fine with it. It would be weird to not audition. It would be very strange.
And the idea of auditioning from home, I was not familiar with it until the last 6 months because my son is an actor. And he's doing musical theater. He's graduating from college this spring, and he's been doing auditions in his bedroom.
Yeah.
And I keep hearing him talk to himself or into his iPad and singing and everything else. And then come to think of it, he's out on an audition tonight. He's on a callback. But it's something unique. Now, do you see this as a result of the pandemic, or was this happening before?
It was happening before, but usually it was happening when it did happen before. It happened because someone would be out of the country or unavailable or something like that. Couldn't come in,
Okay.
And so now it has definitely pushed us all. I mean, it just forced everybody into forced casting, into arranging these auditions and having to do whatever they had to do to pivot and receive auditions and edit them themselves and present them. And it forced all the actors to suddenly go, oh, I got to learn about lighting and sound and get a background and get my iPhone and figure out the tripod. And luckily I'd been making videos for a long time. So for me, it was a very gentle adjustment. But for a lot of us, it was like, whoa, how do we do this, And Amazon coming to the house with here's your background, here's your green screen, here's your ring camera, or your ring light.
Your Lord of the Rings light.
It has made life interesting because think about it. Everybody has a studio in their home somewhere. And again, it's just amazing how this has all changed. Now, I'm looking at International Movie Database right now, and I'm looking at some of the things that either have been announced or are in production right now. And there's one I have to ask you about. You are going to be, is it a movie? Is it a TV program called Tesla? And you're going to be George Westinghouse. Now, where I'm located at, I'm in Western Pennsylvania. I'm in the home of, in the area of George Westinghouse because I'm outside of Pittsburgh.
Right.
What does George Westinghouse sound like?
Well, I think he sounds like this. I try to give him an old-timey sound, but regrettably, I believe that particular posting on IMDb is no longer true. I think that's been up there a long time, and I think the people who were making the film originally had the hope of putting me in that role, and now I believe they've been. I've never heard another word from them. It's been several years, but I saw a really wonderful film with Benedict Cumberbatch about Edison, and there was a Westinghouse. It's basically the same story about these.
Okay.
The struggle for direct current, alternating current in the United States, and they've done a really good job. Whoever made that movie, so I think it probably cut the legs out from the movie that I was attached to. But the one I really am interested in is the Big Door Prize, which I did just complete work on. That will be launching, I think, in October on Apple TV. The Big Door Prize sounds like a game show. It's not. It's from the people that did Schitt's Creek. David West
great program.
Reed. And it's going to be funny like that. It's got the great Irish actor Chris O'Dowd, young actor you might remember from Bridesmaids.
Yes.
And he's in it, and some other very, very talented people, and myself. And it's going to be swell. Anyway, that's a fun show. It's going to come out.
Now, I'm also looking at this, and I guess you just got done doing a movie called Gore about Gore Vidal, and you were Johnny Carson.
You're picking some really loaded ones there. That one will never be finished. That particular
it says
one,
completed. I'm looking at it right here. It says completed.
It's completed, and they put it right in the garbage, I think, because it was Kevin Spacey's last film before the debacle.
Yes,
and
okay.
It was about a predatory homosexual writer.
Yeah.
Vidal, and I just don't think we're ever going to see that movie.
I played Johnny Carson in that movie.
Okay, so let me ask you this. So we'll get away from what the movie was about. So you actually portrayed Carson. So did they make you up to look like him? How did they do that?
I wore a hairpiece, and I wore a really, really nice jacket that looked like it had been, came right from Botany 500.
Is Botany 500 still open? I mean,
I wonder. It may be at this point. It's probably Botany 5000.
Yeah.
So. There's a new series out that let me help you out a little bit so that we don't hit any more landmines. But there's a series called Gaslit, which is coming out. That is releasing on April 24th on the Starz networks. Stars Julia Roberts, Sean Penn. I worked on that. I'm in a couple of episodes of that. I worked with both of those Oscar winners. And that's about Watergate and Martha Mitchell. And that is going to be a very interesting project, directed by Matt Ross, who's a terrific director. And I had a lot of fun on that.
I think it's really interesting when you talk about it. So how many of these films or these projects that you worked on, were they shot before 2020 and they realize now with everything going on, maybe they shouldn't come out? Or like you said, with Kevin Spacey, the whole debacle that happened there. Did 2020 play a big part in what was going on, not only in your career, but in the whole Hollywood type situation?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, production shut down for months and months. And, everybody struggled with how are we going to produce content. But films did get made and TV did get made, but it was a big hiccup. And I was fortunate in that I work, a lot of my work I get to do at home in this booth that I'm in right now, talking to you from. I did my Colonel Sanders stuff. I did a lot of animation. I did video games, and I did audiobooks. I'm also an audiobook narrator, and I've done a ton of audiobooks. And so I stayed very busy during that period, but boy, I sure wasn't auditioning for anything. I wasn't going out for films or TV. Nobody was. It only recently kind of picked up again and got into a state of, almost normal. but hopefully it'll just keep getting stronger, and we'll all get back to work.
So there's one I have to ask you about, and
Oh, boy.
if it fell apart, let me know.
I will. I'll tell you immediately. I can't wait
Because
to
it
hear.
looks really interesting to me because I've never heard of it.
Okay.
Called Senior Entourage.
Your eye just goes to some of the most
Well,
would say
when I see,
least high
I'm looking
profile
at
things.
these.
Yeah.
It has Ed Asner, Helen
Right.
Reddy,
Mhm.
Charlie Robinson, your mother, Mark
Mhm.
Rydell, and you're doing the voice of Dick Van Dyke.
I did the voice of Dick Van Dyke, yeah, for that, because I don't know why they didn't just call Dick Van Dyke, because he does it pretty well himself.
Yes, he
Yeah,
does.
That was a project that I've not seen. It did get released. It's a small film, but the late Ed Asner, who was a great friend of my mom's,
Yeah.
it's one of his last projects. They had a wonderful relationship, my mom and Ed Asner. She always says, "Oh, I loved Ed Asner," and they had a really unique, wonderful friendship. They did several projects together. And yeah, she was really sad when he passed. He was a cantankerous and outspoken and very talented and funny man.
Whenever you look at your mother's career, and she's been considered one of the greatest moms on TV. You had Shirley Jones, you had Barbara Billingsley, you had your mother, and Carol Brady. It's what we thought of what mom should be.
Right.
Did your mother ever feel typecasted because of it, or was she just so grateful that people knew who she was? Because
I think she felt grateful. Yeah, grateful. I mean, there probably was a little bit of typecasting, but Marion Cunningham was a very specific character, and you really didn't find that opportunity. I don't think. But she, after Happy Days, she went back to the theater. Which she never really left. I mean, even in the hiatus, she would work in the theater, and she did plays all over the country. She loves the theater. That's her training. And she's a very gifted theater actress. And then, she did all kinds of different things after that. She was in a wonderful show called Brooklyn Bridge.
Yes.
Which was quite different from Marion Cunningham in that she played a Jewish, I believe, Polish grandmother in Brooklyn, which was based on Gary David Goldberg's family. He was the creator of Brooklyn Bridge and Family Ties. So, she's a versatile performer, and I know, having grown up in the house with her, she was extremely grateful to Gary Marshall for casting her as Marion Cunningham and changing our lives.
Because recently, and I mean, they're making a spinoff of it, I guess you could say, is that she was on the 70s show as Red's mother.
Uh-huh.
And watching your mother smoke on TV, or at least do that, it was like, wait a minute, this is Mrs. C. She's not supposed to.
Right.
But again, she took on that role as being a cantankerous old biddy.
Yeah.
Who developed a crush on Fez because he enjoyed rubbing her feet, which was a very unique and odd plot twist in the program. So again, I see your mother being very talented in that. Now, has your mother, and I know I've tried to get her on the program, and I understand that she has officially retired.
Yeah.
And has she done anything within the last couple of years other than the piece that I just brought up? Has she done anything else? And
she's done some animation. She's done some animation. Yeah. But yeah, she's. I never thought she would, but she said, one day she was like, I think I don't need to do this anymore, and so she is just enjoying. And when a person gets to be 89, 90. You kind of cut them a little slack. Mom, if you want to stay home, sit in the sun and enjoy your garden,
right?
Talk to your friends, I think you ought to do it. And I don't think anyone would begrudge her.
No, not at all. But again,
she's
I
done
just
it all. She's hit all the high points. She what she says a lot is that she did what she set out to do. And when she was a little girl in Albert Lea, Minnesota, she had this dream, and she made it. She did it. And it was completely unlikely sort of scenario, but she pulled it off, and So you got to cut her some slack, Well done.
One of her earliest roles, and if it was, she was on Perry Mason.
Yeah.
A very young Marion Ross. And
right.
When did she really start acting? When did she start being on TV?
Oh, in the early days of television.
Okay.
In live TV. She worked with Noel Coward on a live production at CBS of Blythe Spirit with Claudette Colbert and Lauren Bacall. That's like, I don't know, early 50s, I think. And so, yeah, she was, that's when TV was live and you didn't have anything pre-taped. So she's been in it from the very beginning.
Whenever you started, and what year did you start working in the business?
Well, I started working in voiceover for television in the early 80s. Around about 1984, 1985, I was doing cartoon voices for a couple different shows. The McNeil Lehrer Report, if you remember that news show that was on.
Yes.
Every Friday, they would have a political cartoons section, and they would kind of zoom in and out of the political cartoons. And we would create, me and my friends, we would create Ronald Reagan's voice and Mikhail Gorbachev, and these different people in the news. We would make up voices and bring them to life. And I was in an animated series from Rankin Bass. I did 65 episodes of a thing called the Comic Strip. And then I started doing a lot of commercials. So that was all in the early 80s.
So did you ever, and I know your last name is different than your mother's. Did people know who you were, or did you have to prove yourself? Did you ride on your mother's coattails, so to say?
Well, I won't say that I didn't try, but the fact was that the areas that I was getting into in New York, I was in New York City, and she didn't really have contacts in New York too much, so I did have to make it on my own steam. That being said, she did introduce me to Ron Howard, and Ron Howard cast me in the first film I ever did, and in 4 other films after that. So, if those are coattails, then yes, I lovingly and gratefully jumped onto them. But I did, as always, you can go so far on those introductions, and then you actually have to prove yourself. And I think Ron has always been he's been a great supporter. So I guess I'm not too dreadful.
So how you've done 5 Ron Howard films?
Yeah. The Paper was the first one with Marissa Tomei.
Okay.
And then I did a show called Ed TV, I think was next. Then Apollo 13. Then The Grinch. And the last one I've done, it's been quite a while now, was Frost Nixon. I think that's quite a while.
So who did you play in Frost Nixon?
I was one of the Nixon entourage, so I was on the Nixon team. Gosh, I can't remember my character's name, but it was based on a real guy.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a fun project to work on. Apollo 13 was really the best for me. That's one of my favorite film experiences because it was such a strong script. It was such a meaningful project and inspiring, and I learned a lot. I learned about the space program and I met a lot of people, and it was a really big movie at Universal. A lot of fun to do. I met astronauts. I met people that worked at Mission Control, and just immerse yourself into that world was like, wow. It was really eye-opening and enjoyable.
And not only that, you got to work with Tom Hanks. What more can you ask for?
Yeah, that's right. And Gary Sinise and Ed Harris. I work with Ed Harris quite a bit. Ed is great, and I'd work with him again anytime. Very talented guy.
This is my way of playing 6 Degrees from Kevin Bacon, because now that I've talked to you, you worked with him too. So
that's right. I've worked with him twice. Really well. He was in Frost Nixon too.
That's the only way I get to say that I'm associated with famous people is by talking to somebody else. Yeah, it works. So you did another one dealing with Clinton, Trump, and I forget the other president that just happened to be there. Do you like doing that type of satire?
I'm not sure which project you're specifically talking about, but I've done quite a lot of president stuff. I've done Bill Clinton. In fact, I'm going to do Bill Clinton again real soon. And George W. Bush.
It was the TV series Trumped.
That's another very insignificant part of my resume. You seem to be attracted to the most
Well, I look at the most unique stuff that most people haven't heard of.
Yeah,
like, of
and
course, you did Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I mean, everybody knows who those are.
Yeah, well, okay. I usually bring out the highlights, Friends and things like that. But okay, yeah,
we all heard of those.
Trump was a friend of mine, Jeff Rector, a very talented filmmaker, and he was doing these. He'd like to play Trump, and so he did these silly YouTube videos. And my wife also is an actress, and she was a part of that. And but I've done the presidents quite a bit, especially for a show called For All Mankind on Apple. Okay. And they've needed Nixon and John F. Kennedy and Teddy Kennedy. And I think they needed Clinton too. And they call me in. I really appreciate it. It's fun to do those characters. You'd think that there would be tons of guys who could do those voices, and I imagine there are. But I'm always grateful when I get the job.
That's really interesting because, like you said, I would assume there'd be tons of guys. But if you have a reputation that precedes you, I mean, that's great. A podcast series, you played Richard Nixon in Operation Cordelia.
That's right. And I'm also going to be playing Nixon in an upcoming podcast that I'm very excited about called Space 1969. And it's about a reimagining of the space program if Kennedy had only been wounded in Dallas.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's very funny. It's by one of the original writers of The Simpsons, and I play a lot of characters, but I do play Richard Nixon, and it's a very unusual telling of this story, I can tell you. And you're going to want to listen to Space 1969, believe me. That's coming out in June.
What I find interesting, and please tell me, with the advent of what's going on the internet, you have YouTube, you have all these streaming services, these podcasts, because of the way the media is being distributed now, has that opened up new avenues for you?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, there's tons of content going on. There's tons of creativity going on, and people could collaborate over vast distances. So, yeah, I love it. I thrive on it. We spend a good deal of our time here at my house, my daughter and my wife and I, thinking of ways to create more video content stuff for TikTok. We feed my YouTube channel, which is Jimpressions, if anyone's interested. We have daily videos at least once a day with impressions and things. And, are we making any money from it? Not necessarily, but nothing to crow about. But we feel the satisfaction of meeting new people, of getting feedback, of being creative, and all those things that that artists love to do. I mean, most artists I know, whether they're musicians or writers or whatever, do we want to make a living at what we're doing? Absolutely. Would we be doing it anyway? Yes, because we love to create.
Now, and I asked Anson this too, but when he left Happy Days, if someone came to you and said, "Hey, Jim, we have this idea of a TV series. We want to put you as the main character," would you jump at it, or would you start going, "Wait a minute, I want more input than just standing on a stage and acting"?
Well, I'd like to know what the idea is.
Okay.
If it's something that's in line with what I'm trying to do, for example, I mean, these days, entertainment and television, some of it's amazing. I mean, we're going through a kind of a golden age of television. I think the writing is amazing. The shows, the production, what can be done is just staggering. But that being said, there are also some shows where you're like, what is the purpose of this show?
Right.
Are we just trying to make people feel icky? Or are we trying to uplift people, And there are many, many shows that make you laugh, that are fantastic and fun. Like Parks and Recreation is one where I was on it 6 or 7 times. I really enjoyed being part of that. There are other shows where you're like, man, who's watching this and why? And so I would want to always be part of something that is inspiring or at least funny and not just snarky or abusive, because there's quite a few things out there that are like that.
So if I came to you and say, "Hey, Jim, we have this idea of this reality TV program and we want to stick you in the middle of nowhere with 5 other people," would you do it?
Probably not.
Okay. Because everybody right now seems to be, that's what they're doing. They're pulling these people that are doing like voiceovers or former sports stars and stuff like that and they're putting them on. And in my opinion, those people are really desperate for work, or they're trying to get their name back out there again. The model, why can't I think of her name right now, who's on the one, and I'm looking at her going, why are you doing this? But again, everybody has their own purpose and their own need to be able to do something like that. Do you feel the right?
Everybody has their own mortgage.
Yeah, true, true too. Hey, do you feel the writing has either gotten better, gotten worse, or stayed the same when it comes to scripted TV?
I think it's gotten better. I think there's a lot of tremendous work that's being done out there, and I have a theory that the writing is better because there's less futzing with it. You know, back in the 60s and 70s even, when I know this from, watching the writers on Happy Days,
right?
There was not endless rewriting and second guessing of material. They would sort of write it, and then they maybe do another rewrite, and then on the night they might try some alternates. But these days, like on comedy shows, I know from observing my sister's career, she was a very successful television writer. They futz with things forever. They go over and over and change and query and wonder and do alternates. And it's like, oh my God. These days, there's so many platforms now and so many television shows and such a rush to get content on the air. I have a feeling there's less of a heavy hand weighing over everybody, saying, well, are you sure that this, and our corporate identity doesn't really fit with that? And I think writers are possibly, it's just a theory, possibly a little bit more on their own and doing things on their own lights. And that, I think, will always result in better work.
Your mother's program, Happy Days, we would classify as appointment TV because it was on every week at the same time, and you had to actually sit and make an appointment to sit down and watch it. Right. Unlike the Netflix, the Apple TV, the stuff like that. Do you think Happy Days, if we had that type of setting back then, with the streaming services, do you think Happy Days would have been as big as a program as it did become? Or do you think it would have gotten lost in everything else that's out there?
Well, I mean, it's impossible to say, but I think it would have done really well. The characters, people love the characters. If they actually discovered the show and got attached to it, it was a fun, brilliant, simple, easy to watch show that the whole family could watch together, and was super silly sometimes. The Fonz, you forget the Fonz, or maybe you don't forget, the Fonz was like Elvis. I mean, people were so into the Fonz, and he was in this irresistible character. Henry Winkler just acted the hell out of him. He created this very unusual character that is nothing like Henry Winkler. And, I think people would have found it and they would have stuck to it like glue, just like they did Game of Thrones or, Better Call Saul or any other great show.
Well, and look at Schitt's Creek and stuff like that, and the marvelous Miss Maisel that you happen to be on. And
yes, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Forget about Senior Entourage. Yeah, the marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Were you only on one episode of that?
Yeah, I had a small part. They were looking for an impressionist.
Okay.
And they were looking for an impressionist of the period. And of course the period of Miss Maisel is the early 60s. And so I went, oh man, I got this, and they didn't have a script at the time. So I created my own little routine featuring, people of the day. Burt Lancaster, I remember I did. And Minnie Pearl. And I did John Wayne. And, people that a comic impressionist would have done in 1963 or 64. And they loved it. They hired me. They flew me out. And it was a great experience.
Which season was that? Because it's 2018. Season 2. Okay.
Yeah.
Because you played Joey Parker in that.
Joey Parker, the famous Canadian impressionist. They said he was Canadian, so I think it was a kind of a nod to Rich Little, who is Canadian.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Are you surprised that program took off the way it did?
Which one?
Marvelous Miss Maisel.
No.
That it became this program that everybody talked about, was on Amazon Prime, and Amazon Prime really, no one ever thought of them making their own programming. And then all of a sudden this came out, and then it just took off.
Well, I'm not surprised because I'm a fan. I was a fan before I worked on the show, which is kind of rare. For me anyway. It's beautifully produced, beautifully written. The performers are fantastic. the set decorating, the costumes, the music, the performers are just amazing to me. And Amazon did a very good job of promoting it. I saw it everywhere. You could not miss advertisements for that show. So I think the curiosity level was up there, and it just has it's just a high quality television show, and very enjoyable.
So the program that you have coming out on Apple TV, that's
the Big Door Prize.
Yeah, the Big Door Prize.
Yes.
Have they only agreed to one season, or is that going to be more than one season? Hopefully, or how's that going to work?
Hopefully, it'll be 25 seasons.
Okay.
And yeah, I'll be doing it into my 80s. Yeah.
Well, the reason I ask is because we've had so many programs that have been really good that have only seen one season. And
well,
they
it's
have
not a limited season. It's not a limited series. There are limited series that are set up to be just 6 episodes or 8 episodes, like the Queen's Gambit. Queen's Gambit was a great series, but it had, it ended. And that's how the British do it a lot. Even Ricky Gervais's shows, they kind of have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and they're fine with that. In America, I think we're always going for the jackpot. We're always going. Not, you want to have the Simpsons. Let's just keep going into the sunset. The Big Door Prize, which is not about a door prize, it's not a game show. It's about a small town that gets this fortune-telling high-tech machine dropped in the middle of it, and people, it purports to tell people their destiny, and that just creates havoc. And it's very funny. And as I said, Chris O'Dowd is in it. He's marvelous. That show will be hopefully many, many seasons, and I invite your listeners to check it out in October.
In October. I'm looking forward to that, because that sounds really interesting about the
Apple
whole
TV
fortune-telling idea, which then makes me think about, the movie Big with Tom Hanks in it, where they had the fortune-telling machine. He makes the wish. Yeah. So I can see that being very, very unique and something to watch. And hopefully it does. Hopefully it does give you many, many seasons, and you'll be able to retire from that. The same way your mother's retired. But, but Jim, thank you very much. This has really been a pleasure to be able to talk to you, not only about your career, but also about your mother's career, and being able to tie all these loose ends together. Because again, like I said, a lot of people don't see who you are because they only hear you, or they don't recognize the name. And and sometimes that must be difficult.
I guess so. I'll let you know.
Okay. I just wanted to I've heard other people say it is. I don't know.
I don't mind. I'm grateful. I'm so grateful to work in show business, to do the things I do, to have the kind of freedom I have, to have the creative life I have. I love our new technology. I love being on YouTube, so I got no complaints. I really don't. So is there anything else coming out that is not incorrect on International Movie Database? Verified. I have a show. I did a nice guest spot on HBO's Hunters, which is a show that stars Al Pacino. Now, I didn't work with Al. Regrettably, I hope to one day, but I did get to play a really cool character. I can't talk about it too much, but that's a very interesting show, and that will be coming out this summer sometime too, maybe in June. That's Hunters. So a lot of interesting stuff coming out this year.
Well, Jim, thank you very much. It was a total pleasure to be able to talk to you, and please tell your mother I said hi. Not that she knows who I am, but hey, I've always wanted to talk to Mrs. C, and this is the closest I will ever get. So thank you very much.
Getting closer. All right. Warmer.
Hot. Jim, thank you very much. You have a great one. We'll talk to you next time. Hey, a big thank you goes out to Jim Meskimen for joining me today. Really appreciate it. Talking about his career, talking about his mother, Marion Ross. Really a blast to be able to take time to talk to him today. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, especially me being wrong on a few things, which is kind of cool too, because he was really nice. So anyways, thank you very much for listening to this edition of The Bill Alexander Show. And we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening to The Bill Alexander Show. The Bill Alexander Show is a $1 Million Baby production. For more information, go to thebillalexandershow.com.